Bohème is such a classic. It's one of those core pieces that every opera company needs to do.
Audiences can connect with Bohème because they can identify with the situations and the characters.
It's a wonderful blockbuster show, of course, but it also has some of the most tender moments that Puccini put to paper.
It's real life. It's a love story.
Fort Worth Opera's production of La Bohème is a grand classic. Puccini was an Italian composer writing for the opera stage in the late 1800s. He was one of the innovators and creators of what is called the Verismo style, which focuses on realistic stories as compared to earlier, more classic Greek and drama tragedies.
About the time of the turn of the century, Romanticism was fading in popularity. It was being seen as sentimental and emotional, and the lack of reality in it was bothering people. So artists began writing naturalistic operas, and Puccini was an advocate of that. And naturalism in the arts was a way of showing the real world, showing people in real life situations how they would truly react emotionally, and there was always passion involved and not the romantic senses that were associated with earlier operas of the 1800s.
If I had to describe La Bohème in one sentence or phrase, it would be real life. So you've got these two couples, Marcello and Musetta, and Rodolfo and Mimi. And Mimi and Rodolfo have this beautiful love relationship, and they fall for each other so hard, and everybody can identify with that. And then Musetta and Marcello, they're like these fiery off and on, and one's always high and the other one's low, and they kind of come together and have this explosion, and then they fall apart, and then you know they're going to come back together at some point.
The story of Bohème was actually an adaptation of an existing novel. It was based on a French story that is a collection of vignettes of these artists' lives. Puccini took that story and worked with his librettist to develop the opera Bohème.
Bohème was his fourth opera, and immediately following Bohème was Tosca and Madame Butterfly, which are the three operas that have become his most beloved and most well-known and recognized.
There are a number of other great operas from that period, many of which are still performed, like Pagliacci, but that was the only piece that's still remembered from that composer. Whereas Puccini really understood how the theater worked and was able to take full advantage of his composition skills and choosing the stories that would help combine to make pieces that have stood the test of time.
A lot of operas that have stood the test of time were at first hated by critics. La Bohème is one of them. La Bohème was hated by critics. It had become very common to criticize Puccini because despite all of his musical training, he refused to follow accepted rules of composition. So music critics and composers used that as a barb to attack him. Audiences, however, as they do today, love his music. And when La Bohème premiered, in Palermo, for example, the audience absolutely refused to leave the theater until the entire final scene received an encore performance.
There are a number of operas that are sort of the core of the opera repertoire. But I think what makes Bohème special and a little bit different is that it really does distill the story into a very direct love story. When Darren and I hear singers that we're considering for a production, the first thing we're looking for is their voice. We want a singer that has something to say, that can bring something interesting to this role, that has the dramatic ability that we're looking for. Because for us, our operas are not just come to the show and see some beautiful music. We also want to be able to tell a beautiful story, an amazing story, whatever that story happens to be.
For those of you who have seen La Bohème before, you may have a certain expectation. You know that certain events will happen over the course of the opera. However, if I do my job right, you'll still be surprised at those events when you're seeing it. Nothing should be taken for granted. Yes, we know what will happen at the end. However, how we get to the end is up to us.
And not to play off Rent or anything, but we really wanted it to be colorblind casting. So we want our community to see all kinds of people on the stage.
We wanted a cast that would be believable as a group of friends living in this garret in Paris, a group of starving artists.
So not only is Rosa Betancourt as Musetta a beautiful singer, she's also a beautiful Hispanic singer.
In the role of Musetta, as a Hispanic woman, I relate to my music, to the bolero, to la salsa, merengue. All of that has a lot of passion, a lot of rhythm, a lot of soul and heat. So that's what I bring to Musetta, the heatness of the Caribbean. She's the it girl. Everybody wants to be her friend. Everywhere she goes, she's the soul of the party. She is daring. She knows herself. Anything that she wants, she will know how to get it because she has the tools and she knows how to use them.
Rodolfo is a poet, and in the beginning he's kind of shy, but he also really comes alive when he's actually using his poetry. And in the first act, he meets Mimi for the very first time, and he has a little bit of an awkward encounter. It's a little bit awkward, but then he starts getting into his poetry, and he's able to open up.
They have a little moment. They just click, and they connect, and they start talking, and they fall in love really quickly. And they go out, and they have fun. They meet all his friends, and it's the beginning of a wonderful love story. And it's not just the love story of Mimi and Rodolfo, but it's also the love story of Mimi joining this incredible group of bohemians. Shona, Colline, and Marcello.
Marcello is a painter, and he's a very passionate, fun guy, but a bit of a trickster, I'd say, at the same time. For instance, he's been repainting the same painting over and over again each year and re-entering it into the same contest, just hoping that he'll win every time, which is what we find him working on in the beginning, the Red Sea painting. At the same time, he does have a bit of a temper problem due to his intense passion, like many artists do, which definitely comes up when he's with his on and off lover, Musetta.
They hate and they love each other, that the moment that they come together is just like fireworks. It's crazy, amazing.
When we were thinking about Bohème, I hadn't really thought of Mary Dunleavy at first. She's a big Met star, you know, I didn't know whether we could even get her, but I happened to be hosting the Wolf Trap 40th anniversary, and Mary, like me and like many other people, were alumni of the Wolf Trap Opera Company.
I saw Darren a couple summers ago at a Wolf Trap reunion, and he was just, "Where have you been? I love you. You're singing so great. Come over and sing for me." And I said, "I've been waiting for you to ask me. What took you so long?"
It's really exciting for me to make my debut here at Fort Worth Opera as Rodolfo and La Bohème, because Darren Keith Woods, who runs this opera company as the general director, was the one who discovered me when I was 19 years old and just discovering my voice.
I could not be happier to be back here. This feels kind of like a home for me.
I am really excited to be back in Fort Worth Opera. I mean, once you work with this company, they embrace you in a manner of family.
And Bass Hall is...
If there's one moment I look forward to, it's Musetta's entrance in Act 2. So we've had the first act, which is a little bit dark and heavy. We're kind of getting introduced to all the characters. They're struggling for their art, and then the scene changes, and you hear this laughter, and Musetta comes in this gorgeous, bright-colored dress, and literally the first thing you hear is laughter. And so it reminds you that they're all these young people kind of struggling to figure it out, and somehow it doesn't seem so heavy.
Despite all the moments that happen in Bohème, the build-up in Act 2, from Musetta's entrance and through her aria and the ensemble that comes after her aria, leading up to this big, huge crescendo where Marcello finally busts out and says what he wants to. Everyone's singing on stage, and they come together in this huge chord, and it finally resolves, and we get the theme of Musetta's waltz again. It is the most incredible build-up in opera. I love it, love it, love it. I play it back constantly. What you'll see on stage will be incredible. We'll be making out, we'll be jumping around. It will be incredible.
My favorite moment in La Bohème, and it never ceases to move me the hundreds of times I've seen it, is the minute where Rodolfo touches her hand and begins to sing his aria, Che gelida manina, how cold your little hand is. And he attempts to tell her about him. Who is he? He's a poet. What does he do? He writes. And how does he live? He just lives. And in that moment, he falls in love with her, and he says, now tell me a little bit about yourself. And then she sings her famous aria, Mi chiamano Mimi. They call me Mimi. I don't know why. My name's Lucia. That magic moment of those two people falling in love is sublime and will get you every single time.
My favorite moment of La Bohème happens in Act 1, and it's actually after Rodolfo and Mimi have met each other. They've introduced each other through arias. There's a famous aria that Rodolfo sings, and where he tells Mimi that he's a poet, and then Mimi tells Rodolfo all about herself in her aria. And then the guys interrupt. You think there's something special about to happen, and then the guys start screaming from the street. They're like, Rodolfo, where are you? Why aren't you at the restaurant? And Rodolfo goes, and he's like screaming out the window. And then he turns around, and as soon as he turns around, he looks into Mimi's eyes, and this chord that Puccini wrote just hits, and the floodgates open, and it's the most amazing moment of the opera for me. And it doesn't matter whether I'm watching it, listening to it on a recording, or just actually there on stage. It doesn't matter if it's with the piano or with the orchestra. It always gives me chills. And it's just that moment of just all that emotion and passion coming out where Rodolfo and Mimi finally realize that they are actually in love with each other.
One of my favorites is my aria in Act 3, Donde lieta, when she's saying goodbye to Rodolfo. To me, it's just so moving, and it's short, sweet, and just absolutely perfect. Puccini did like a masterpiece there.
I think my favorite moment in the opera is in Act 3, where you have this quartet happening with two completely different stories. There's one set of lovers who are deciding to stay together. That's Mimi and Rodolfo. And there's one group of lovers, Marcello and Musetta, that are deciding to split. Even though we've been seeing them get together and break up throughout the opera, in this one moment, I think Puccini captures the essence of what it means to say, you know what, let's not break up. Let's stay together and be in love. As well as the counterpoint to that, which is, I hate you and I don't want to be with you ever again. And musically, he captures both in this one piece of music.
La Bohème is one of the masterpieces of opera.
This ensemble that comes together that we've cast for this show, I am very excited to hear what they do with this music and this story.
The music is fantastic. It's one of those pieces where you don't realize how much you actually know about it until you're listening to the music and you go, oh wait, I've heard this before.
From the first note to the last note is so engaging, so passionate. It's just breathtaking.
It grips your heart and doesn't let it go.
The love that all of that sort of family of friends shares is so beautiful and illustrated beautifully by the music. So I hope that stays with you long after you leave Bass Hall.
Just ricchiola in tre spasi muore.